They say time heals all wounds, but no one ever tells you how to handle it when someone tries to cover them up with a designer smile and a new wedding ring. Hi, I'm Giselle, and this is how my family drama unraveled. At 26, I should be living my best life. I've got a sweet gig as a software engineer at a hot tech startup, my own apartment, and well, that's where it gets tricky. See, 10 years ago, my mom and I were in a car accident. I walked away with scars, both physical and emotional. Mom didn't walk away at all. The memories of that day cling to me like shadows. The screeching tires, the shattering glass, and my mom's final words, "I love you, Giselle. Be strong." Some days it feels like it happened just yesterday. Other days it feels like a lifetime ago. My dad and younger brother, Ethan, have moved on, each in their own way. But me, I'm still stuck, one foot anchored in the past, unable to let go. And then 6 months ago, Dad dropped a bombshell. "Giselle, honey, I've met someone. Her name is Cynthia, and we're getting married." Cynthia, former model, 38, a smile that could light up Times Square, and an attitude that could dim it just as fast. From the moment I met her, it was clear she saw me as a threat. "Oh, Giselle," she purred, her voice laced with fake sweetness. "Still single. Don't worry, dear. There's someone out there for everyone. Eventually." Every word was a subtle dig, sharp enough to cut but wrapped in enough sugar to seem harmless. But I grit my teeth and endured it, for Dad's sake. After everything we'd been through, didn't he deserve to be happy? My best friend and coworker, Aisha, she gets it. "Girl, you need to set some boundaries with this woman," she said over lunch last week. "She's not your mom, and she never will be." Easier said than done, especially with Thanksgiving looming. As I pull up to Dad's house, my stomach tightens into a knot. The house looks different now. Mom's warm, welcoming decorations have been replaced with Cynthia's sleek, modern taste. It feels like I'm walking into a stranger's home. I take a deep breath, bracing myself for what's to come. "You can do this, Giselle," I mutter under my breath. "It's just one day." But as I ring the doorbell, memories of past Thanksgivings flood back. The smell of Mom's famous apple pie, her laughter blending with the sound of the Macy's parade on TV. Now it's the scent of some fancy catered meal and a clicking of Cynthia's designer heels. The door swings open, and there she is, Cynthia in all her perfectly coiffed glory. "Giselle, darling," she beams, her smile too perfect to be real. "So glad you could make it. Come in, come in." I force a smile, stepping inside. The weight of the past presses down on me, while the uncertainty of the future lingers like a storm cloud on the horizon. Little do I know, this Thanksgiving is about to make all those past family dinners look like a walk in the park. But hey, that's family, right? Sometimes the ties that bind can also strangle. The dinner starts like a powder keg just waiting for a spark. The tension in the air is thick enough to slice through, and Cynthia's smile is as plastic as the decorative turkeys on the table. "Giselle, dear, would you like some wine?" Cynthia asks, her voice saccharine as ever. "Sure, thanks." I nod stiffly, watching as she pours. I can't help but notice the changes around me. Mom's beloved china is nowhere to be found, replaced by sleek, modern plates that scream Cynthia. Dad clears his throat awkwardly. "So, Ethan, how's school going?" Grateful for the distraction, Ethan jumps into a story about his latest project. But Cynthia, of course, isn't interested. "That's nice, sweetie," she interrupts, "but let's talk about something more interesting." Cynthia's voice dripped with fox enthusiasm as she set her wine glass down and fixed her gaze on me. "Giselle, any men in your life?" I nearly choked on my wine. "I'm focusing on my career right now," I manage, hoping to steer the conversation elsewhere. Cynthia's eyes gleamed with amusement as she teased, "Oh honey, you don't want to wait too long." "Tick-tock." She gestured dramatically with her hand as if she had just dropped some life-changing wisdom. Dad shifted uncomfortably beside her. "Cynthia, maybe we should." "Oh, Robert," she cut him off with a laugh, patting his hand condescendingly. "I'm just looking out for her. That's what mothers do, right?" The word mothers hit me like a slap. My grip on the fork tightened as memories of my mom came flooding back. Cynthia's presence felt like an eraser, rubbing away everything that made my family my family. As dinner dragged on, her attempts to assert dominance only grew bolder. She spoke as though she had always been a part of our family, casually claiming traditions and moments that had nothing to do with her. Each time, it was as though Mom's memory was being erased, bit by bit, with every word that left Cynthia's mouth. And then, halfway through dinner, she dropped a bomb. "You know, Giselle," Cynthia said, setting her fork down with exaggerated grace, "I think it's time you started calling me Mom. We're family now, after all." The table fell silent. Everyone's eyes were suddenly on me, the tension so thick it felt like I couldn't breathe. I can't do that, Cynthia," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not comfortable with it." Her face hardened in an instant. "And why not? I'm married to your father. I'm the woman of this house now. Because you're not my mother." This time my voice was stronger, the words pushing up from the core of my being. "My mom died 10 years ago, and I'm not ready to call anyone else that." Her eyes flashed with anger, and her lips curled into a sneer. "Well, it's time you got over that, don't you think? It's been a decade. Giselle, stop living in the past." "Cynthia, enough," Dad warned, but she wasn't listening. "No, Robert," she shot back. "She needs to hear this. I've been patient. I've tried to be understanding. But I am tired of walking on eggshells in my own home. I am your wife, and I deserve respect." "Respect is earned," I snapped, the years of bottled up emotion finally bubbling to the surface. "And you can't force someone to see you as their mother." What happened next felt like slow motion. Cynthia stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Her face was twisted in rage as she raised her hand. And then it came down, a sharp slap that echoed through the room. My cheek stung where her palm connected, but the pain was nothing compared to the shock that rippled across the table. For a moment, everything was frozen. Then chaos erupted. Dad jumped up, putting himself between us, his voice a frantic blur. Ethan was shouting something I couldn't quite make out, but I couldn't focus on any of it. I was back in that car, 10 years ago, the world spinning out of control around me. Without a word, I grabbed my purse and bolted for the door. I could hear Dad calling after me, but I didn't stop. The drive home was a blur of tears and the dull ache in my cheek. When I finally made it back to my apartment, I sat in front of the mirror, staring at the red mark on my face. It wasn't just about the slap. It was about everything that had led to this moment, about how Cynthia was threatening to tear apart what little remained of our family, and about how I could no longer stand by and let it happen. Something had to change. I picked up my phone and dialed Dad's number. It was time to have a serious talk about Cynthia and the future of our family, because if there was one thing Mom had taught me, it was that family was worth fighting for, even when the fight got ugly. The days after the Thanksgiving disaster were a blur of missed calls from Dad and a growing sense of dread gnawing at my gut. I replayed every moment with Cynthia in my mind, searching for the clues I'd missed, the signs I had ignored. She wasn't just trying to be the new mom, she was trying to isolate Dad from us. "I can't believe she hit you," Aisha said, her voice filled with outrage over coffee. "That's straight up assault." I nodded, absently touching my cheek. "It's not just the slap. It's everything. The way she's been acting. It's like she's trying to erase Mom entirely." That's when the realization hit me. Cynthia wasn't just angling to replace Mom. She was systematically isolating Dad. I started digging. It wasn't hard to find dirt on Cynthia. Former models leave quite the digital trail, and what I found made my blood run cold. 3 marriages, I muttered, scrolling through old news articles. All to wealthy older men, and each one ended in a messy, expensive divorce. But it was an anonymous comment on an old gossip blog that really made my skin crawl. "Watch out for Cynthia. She'll bleed you dry and make you think it was your idea." I called Ethan, desperate to hear a familiar voice. "Hey, how's Dad doing?" Ethan sighed heavily. "I don't know. Cynthia's got him convinced you overreacted. She's been talking about family therapy, saying we all need to heal." My stomach churned. "Ethan, has she been trying to keep you from seeing Dad?" The pause on the other end of the line was all the confirmation I needed. "She keeps planning these couples trips," Ethan finally said, his voice weary. "And when I try to visit, she always has some reason why it's not a good time." I took a deep breath. "Ethan, we need to talk. In person, there's something you need to see." The next day, we met at a coffee shop, and I laid it all out, Cynthia's history of manipulation, her lavish spending, the emotional control. I watched Ethan's expression change from disbelief to shock as the reality set in. But Dad seems so happy, he said weakly. Does he? I countered. Or is he just afraid to rock the boat? As we pieced everything together, a clearer picture emerged. Cynthia's insecurity. Her need to be the center of attention. Her fear of aging and losing the lifestyle she clung to. She didn't see us as family. She saw us as a threat. So, what do we do now? Ethan asked, his voice low. I squared my shoulders, determination surging through me. We talk to Dad. We show him what we found. And we make him see what's really going on. Doubt crept in, gnawing at the edges of my resolve. Would Dad even believe us? Or had Cynthia's manipulation dug in too deep? He has to see it, Ethan said, echoing my thoughts. Once we lay it all out, he'll understand. I nodded, trying to convince myself as much as him. Right, we'll make him see. As we left the coffee shop, I felt a strange mix of determination and dread. This conversation wasn't going to be easy, but for the sake of our family, for Mom's memory, it had to be done. Over the next few days, I prepared meticulously, gathering evidence and bracing myself for the confrontation ahead. When I picked up the phone to arrange the meeting with Dad, I couldn't shake the feeling that this would change everything, for better or for worse. The truth about Cynthia was about to come out, and our family would never be the same. I set the meeting at our old favorite diner, a neutral spot far from Cynthia's influence. When Dad and Ethan slid into the booth, the tension between us was palpable. Thanks for coming, I began, my heart pounding. We need to talk about Cynthia. Dad's face tightened. Giselle, if this is about Thanksgiving. It's more than that, Dad, Ethan interjected. Please just hear us out. I took a deep breath and laid out everything we had uncovered. Cynthia's past marriages, her financial habits, her manipulation tactics. As I spoke, I watched Dad's expression shift from defensive to confused to devastated. I had no idea, he mumbled, staring into his coffee cup as though it held answers. Ethan leaned in, his voice gentle. Dad, has Cynthia been trying to keep you from seeing us? The silence was deafening. Finally, Dad nodded, his face weary. She always has a reason why it's not a good time for you to visit. I thought. He trailed off, shaking his head. I thought she was just trying to help us bond as a new family. And the Thanksgiving incident? I asked softly, testing the waters. Dad's eyes welled up. I should have stood up for you, Giselle. I'm so sorry. As we talked, the full extent of Cynthia's manipulation became clear. She had been subtly isolating us from each other, playing on our vulnerabilities. We'd all been caught in her web. What do we do now? Ethan asked. Dad straightened in his seat, a determination in his eyes that I hadn't seen in years. We confront her. Together. Set some firm boundaries. The next day we gathered at Dad's house. The moment Cynthia saw the three of us united, her saccharine smile faltered. What's going on? She asked, her voice tight, eyes flicking between us. Dad took the lead, his voice calm but resolute. Cynthia, we need to talk about your behavior and the future of this family. As he laid out our concerns, Cynthia's mask began to slip. Her carefully crafted facade cracked, and anger twisted her features. You ungrateful brats. She screamed. After everything I've done for this family. Her outburst only confirmed what we already knew. Dad's face hardened, his voice steady. I think you should leave, Cynthia, he said quietly. This marriage, it was a mistake. Cynthia stormed out, hurling threats about lawyers and alimony. The sound of the door slamming behind her felt like a weight lifting off my chest. It wasn't over. There would be legal battles and emotional fallout. But for the first time in years, it felt like we were a family again. That night, as Dad, Ethan, and I sat around the kitchen table eating pizza, really talking for the first time in what felt like forever, I realized something. We had been so focused on preserving Mom's memory that we'd forgotten her greatest wish for us, to be happy and united. As we laughed and shared old family stories, I knew the road ahead would be long, but we'd face it together. Our foundation was stronger now, built on truth, love, and a shared understanding of what family truly meant. Now I have a question for you. Giselle and her family chose to confront Cynthia directly and cut ties. Do you think this was the right approach? Or should they have tried family therapy or given Cynthia a chance to change? Where do we draw the line between protecting our family and potentially breaking it apart? Share your thoughts in the comments, Your perspective could spark an interesting discussion about family dynamics and dealing with toxic relationships. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more compelling tales of family drama and personal growth. Your support helps keep these thought-provoking stories coming.